We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
With barely a break in between, we've gone from worrying about inflation to worrying about a possible recession. Joe Biden says it's not going to happen, but just about everyone else thinks it's almost inevitable. To figure out the facts, we're joined by economist and author and host of Swamponomics TV, a great show you should all go and watch on libertynation.com, Mr. Andrew Moran. Welcome back to the show, Andrew.
Thank you for having me.
So first, we were told that inflation, it wasn't going to happen. Then it may happen. Then it would happen, but it'd be transitory. And now we're knees deep in inflation. And now we seem to be following this same denial-ridden trajectory with a potential recession. Give me the basics, Andrew. Is it going to happen or not?
Well, Joe Biden, with the Biden Beach talk, he said the other day that he spoke to Larry Summers, and the former Treasury Secretary, and he said that, recession's not going to happen. But if you listen to Larry Summers for last month, he's been saying nothing but that the recession is going to happen within the next 2 years. So the increasing baseline scenario for most of Wall Street, and you can see the way the markets are reacting right now, is that a recession is going to happen. It's inevitable right now, especially because the Federal Reserve, it can't navigate a soft landing. It's going to be a hard crash. And then if you don't want to listen to any of the analysts, you look at the data. Retail sales contracted in May. Consumer sentiments collapsed into the contraction territory. Industrial production had a negative 0.2% contraction. Manufacturing output was 0.1% the other month. So inflation is sky high. So everything in the economy right now is suggesting that a recession is going to happen.
A lot of people are trying to pitch this as it's going to be a soft landing recession if it does happen, and that people will be cushioned from the recession because of the COVID era savings that they built up. Now, I hear about this all the time, that people are flush with cash from the COVID time, but I can't get my head around that. Surely that any of the savings that people may have had, and let's be fair, the average guy and gal didn't get any richer during that period, unless they happen to own Amazon. They didn't get any richer. So surely those savings have been wiped out by inflation, by gas costs, by rent costs, by everything except, I believe it's men's trousers going up in price.
Yeah, well, there's a few things to point out here in your question. The first is that, the debate is how hard the recession is going to be, how long it's going to happen, and then when is it going to occur. The second point is that it's hard to determine precisely how much consumers have saved. Some experts say $2.4 trillion, others say $4.8 trillion. But yeah, I guess you have to look at all the data to find out what's going on with consumers and their bank accounts. Like I said previously, the personal savings rates collapsed to 4.4%. Credit growth has absolutely, skyrocketed. Retail sales are down, so people are staying home. There was a great report the other day from McKinsey, I believe, and it found that everyone is just buying goods as opposed to buying services and experiences. So I think that's also important to point out. And another thing too is that the third point here is that even if people had this money in their bank account, they still have this money in their bank account, their savings are still being wiped out figuratively because of the high inflation. The high inflation is eliminating purchasing power. So if mom and pop have let's say $5,000 in the bank or $10,000 accumulated during the pandemic, that's going to be worth nothing the next couple of years because of how inflation is.
We talk about how deep the recession will be, how long it will be, but I think one of the questions everybody wants to know is how will it impact the average American? I mean, how will this impact their work, their life, their savings, their portfolios? I mean, obviously, 50% of Americans have a portfolio of some description, their 401ks and things like that. How will it impact your average American?
Well, I think the old saying is it's a recession if your neighbor loses his job, but it's a depression if you lose your job. So this recession, it's going to be challenging to determine or forecast or even navigate because you have to see, will the jobs market collapse? Inflation's still going to be skyrocketing. Interest rates are higher, so therefore the lower and middle income households, they have to contend with soaring prices, but also soaring borrowing costs. So there, and then of course, to tie back to the previous point about the stock market, a lot of people are tied up in the stock market. So the stock market's collapsing because of recession fears. So the consumers are going to be bombarded in many different fronts: high inflation, high rates, collapsing stock market? Will the real estate market crash too? That's another concern a lot of people have. So this is going to be a terrible recession that a lot of people are going through, because the thing with the recessions too is that the government has always bailed out, whether it's companies, the people, whatever the case, they always have to intervene. But do they have enough firing power to intervene yet again, whether it's the Fed, whether it's Washington? Because they fired all the Motherball bombs. Yeah, exactly.
But of course, if the government does intervene, it's going to have to be based on newly created money, which will just increase the inflationary pressure anyway, won't it?
Yeah. So what's funny about that is that, before the Fed even started tightening, before it launched its tightening cycle, the Fed funds rate futures market was already penciling in that the Fed was going to slash interest rates in 2024. Oh, excuse me, that by the second half of 2023 or the first half of 2024. Yeah. The Fed confirmed this at the last FOMC meeting by saying, oh yeah, we're prepared to cut rates by 2024, suggesting that, okay, the economy is going to definitely slow down by then. So the Fed needs to pump up the economy. Therefore, when you slash interest rates, you have to also expand the money supply. That floods the economy. That creates more of this inflationary environment yet again.
It also destroys the jobs market, doesn't it?
Yeah. So here we go. So in one of my previous articles, I was talking about perhaps is the jobs market showing signs of slowing down. There are some points suggesting that the sizzling job market is going to be doused by the Fed because it's raising interest rates. You see this in the initial jobless claims 4-week moving average, which removes the week-to-week volatility. You saw how it's been climbing up steadily every week since the beginning of April. You look at the small business numbers. Small businesses are trimming the fat. They're reducing their payrolls. A lot of large companies saying, we're going to start scaling back. Coinbase, Tesla, Twitter, a lot of them are starting to reduce their payroll. So and then Larry Summers, he said the other day, speaking of him earlier, he was saying in order to stop a recession, millions of people are going to have to lose their jobs. And and I guess in a way that is correct, because when you raise interest rates as much as the Fed is anticipating, that's going to reduce business activity. That's going to reduce consumer credit growth. That's going to reduce the consumer consumption, and that's important because the economy is 2/3 consumption, which I don't agree with. But that's
let's very quickly just focus on what you just said there. Mm-hmm. To stop the recession, you need to destroy the job market. Mm-hmm. That's terrifying, Andrew.
Well, yeah, but that's one of the reasons why. That's one of the contributing factors of why inflation is so high, because wage growth has soared. Even a lot of workers don't feel it because it's been negative. I mean, the other day I was reporting on the BLS data from May, and I found that the real wage growth, if you factor in the reduction in work week hours, is actually negative 0.39%. So I mean that's terrifying when it comes to what Summers is saying. Yeah, I mean he is correct, because this job market has been unsustainable, and the job openings are sky high, and the number of quits have also soared. These people are going to have to unfortunately lose their jobs if you want to calm down inflation, and because the Fed's not going to be able to do it. I mean the Federal Reserve has been so behind the curve that everything they do it's inconsequential.
The inconsequential Fed. Andrew Moran, thank you ever so much.
Thank you for having me.
In just a moment, we'll be back with Dave Patterson to discuss wokeness in the United States military and whether a focus on pronouns makes for an effective fighting force. Don't touch that dial. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fighting for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and others.
I can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.